we're recording, Brad.
All right, we're ready to rock. So thanks for showing up for this April 27th session of the Bond Accountability Committee. And we've got a quorum here with 6 folks now from the BAC and a host of folks from the district. So thanks for all joining us. Taking a look at the agenda, if you wouldn't mind displaying that on the screen. It's pretty straightforward. We're in the final stretches of this year. We've got a couple of old business items, just the typical reviewing the bond status report, and then status of the bridging proposal, which is something that's important for all of us to understand what we'll be doing moving forward, and what happened within the board. And then new business items, talking a little bit further about the closeout process, hearing about Beaverton High School as well as Raleigh Hills on the design, which I know we've been eagerly watching and kind of looking for an update on that side. And then, speaking a lot about where we're headed with the additional funding sources that we had that have kind of come in to support the district, and then adjourn hopefully before 8 o'clock if all goes well. And then just looking forward, our next meeting is on June 1st, I believe is what we have. So one more meeting after this, and it's Wednesday, June 1st. So any other items that people wanted to throw out there for covering on the agenda for today? All right, and with that, no other new items to add to the agenda. Let's go ahead and jump in. Do we have any comments now that we've drummed up support for the kind of the bond work that's getting ready to occur with the proposal? Any comments from the community?
No public comment received, Brad, from the community for this meeting.
All right. Then that being the case, we can go ahead and launch into the old business with the status report from March.
Okay, great. I will cover that. And I assume you're going to pull it up here, Josh. Oh, perfect. Okay, that's it.
And Aaron, I'm sorry, I should have, I jumped right into the business, but there was a few new faces that were here, and I should have just gone around the room to see, who else had joined us today, and to welcome the new faces to the conversation. So I do apologize.
No worries. Thank you. That's perfect. I'll introduce them here right now, and then you'll get to see them a little bit more later. So 3, Megan Finch is project manager on the Beaverton. Eric Vulcan, project manager on. Jeff Hammond is a senior project.
Aaron, your audio is coming in delayed. If you can stop your video, I think we can hear you.
Okay, I can do that.
Unfortunately, you're coming a little broken.
Oops. Okay. All right. Hopefully you heard all those names. And they'll all be talking here in a little bit about those projects. So for the financial report this month, not a whole lot of action. You'll see that the program reserve and the other buckets there all increased, just about 250,000. And that was really driven by some money we got back from the state through the SB 1149 program and through the ETO. The SB 1149 money goes back into the district-wide repairs projects. That's actually not reflected in that number, but the money that we'd received for Five Oaks and ACMA, that since those projects are done, that goes straight back into the program reserve. So those were the largest pieces of it. ACMA, we're in the process of wrapping things up out there. As the building occupants have gotten in and settled there, we've had a few little things pop up that we're working on closing out here. So just a little bit of draw on our contingency there. And then just a minor funds transfer from the Seismic project to the McKinley roof project. And that was done because we are pursuing some SRGP grant. That's the State Seismic Rehabilitation Grant Program. We've submitted a grant application for McKinley for next summer. And in preparation for that, we're going ahead with the design work for those seismic improvements, hoping to be successful with that application. So that's what that is for. Schedule perspective. So we've got the VOS Classroom Edition, which we've discussed much in this group, but that project is underway right now. Eric is actually the project manager for that one, and it's going along really well. All the demolition is done, and they're just getting to the point of, under slab utilities and getting ready to do that slab pour for that whole new section. Let's see, what else? We're nearing the completion of Raleigh Hills, the conceptual design. So you'll hear about that here in a couple minutes. I won't talk more about that. And then we've been working, obviously a lot on getting ahead of supply chain issues. So for this summer, everything's kind of already cooked. It's too late to be ordering stuff for projects this summer at this point, but I feel like we're in a pretty good shape. Last year we deferred a few projects that were going to pose an additional risk, like the modular building at ISB and the roof at which school is it? At Montclair. The roof at Montclair was not going to arrive in time, so we delayed it until this summer. So though all those projects fortunately have been contracted well ahead of time at this point and aren't expecting any material delays right now. The other big one was the Bethany roof and seismic project. So that we have a CMGC on and did the first portion of the seismic upgrade last summer. And so working with them, we've been able to make sure we procure all the materials ahead of time. So we're in good shape. Challenges and opportunities. Josh is going to talk tonight about the CARES, the ESSER money, as well as the student investment account, which is they're two separate animals, but they're both benefiting the bond program. And Josh will describe that here in a little bit. And then just again on the McKinley SRGP. So we hope to hear about that next month. We're expecting the state to make the award announcements then. So that's kind of it for the report. Does anybody have any questions?
Just turning back to the board, there's a number of other pieces, the supplementary information that you had. Do you mind if we slide on down to kind of look at the project specific items? This is the summary, but if we could just take a quick browse through the supporting materials.
Absolutely.
Call from
I think primarily looking at the actual the financial summary pages and see if the board had any or the bond committee had any questions about any specific items that we saw here on the financial summaries. So I'll just open that up and kind of look to Tom, Tom Squared, Dick, Renu, and any questions that you guys have about the particular accounting that we've seen kind of change between February and March of this report compared to past reports.
I don't see anything.
The one thing that kind of jumps out at me is when you mentioned the specific challenges, just, I know that we might talk a little bit more about that, but when it comes to how you're managing the procurement challenges, and obviously seeing some supply chain issues there, are you able to let projects ahead of time now to kind of get in front of it for 23, or what do you see now that's really changed? Because before we were seeing things staying fairly level, but it looks like we're anticipating as a district, you're anticipating a little bit higher cost pressure than maybe we were thinking before?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before as one of our lessons learned, being just getting out earlier on the projects, getting ahead of it sooner, and really switching to kind of that 2-year cycle where instead of designing one summer and then building the next summer, we're doing it 2 years in advance just to be more flexible with our options. So we're kind of in the midst of that transition right now. So unfortunately, to get to that point, it means doubling up the workload for 1 year as far as designs go. So that's what we're doing right now. And a lot of our focus and effort really is starting to look towards the 2022 bond at this point too, because there'll be a lot of crossover between the two bonds. Like next summer will be, half the projects will be wrapping up 2014 bond and the other half will be kicking off the next bond. So looking at how we can plan to staff those projects and make sure we're not rushing into projects without having the time to do the appropriate upfront planning.
Thanks for that, Aaron. And I think that ties in pretty smoothly with the next item of old business that we were really talking about, which is the kind of the status of the bridging proposal, because a lot of the staffing that the district had mentioned before, it really is contingent upon how we would actually, kind of keep the BAC running, and then how we might kind of continue bridging the gap, so to speak, between bonds if the 2022 bond is successful. So
I think that was going to be Josh or Sunita, maybe.
Nope, I've got it.
Oh, perfect.
And Sunita can jump in if she's, I know she's listening in. She's again at the airport. So on the screen.
Go ahead. Thank you, Josh, for doing it. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
No problem at all. So the district put together a report for the board that explained basically two things for this committee. One of which is that in the charter, the BAC is only an 8-year committee. And so it was an extension of this committee by 1 year. So to make it 9 to go into next summer, summer of 23. And the second item was that if any committee member from the current BAC wanted to, if the bond were to pass, the future bond, the 2022 bond, anybody from this committee could then apply and be a member in that new committee once that new committee was formed. So those two key items were talked about. On the screen, you see the April 4th board meeting. It was a work session with the school board. There was a first read for the board. They had discussion about it. School board again recognized that your time being a volunteer, your expertise was very helpful to us, to the district, which we very much appreciate. And then at the last board meeting on April 25th, it was in the consent agenda and that was approved. So again, those two items that I talked about were discussed. They were brought forward to the board and the board had approved that. And so that's where we're at today. So last meeting here was this past Monday.
that's terrific. That's
Thanks, Josh. There was one thing that we also discussed in the meeting was that, the closeout document, we can wait till actually all the projects are finished, because we get an update from you guys every month anyway. So there's no point in doing a closeout financial document at this time until all the stuff is done.
Right,
So
great.
I just wanted to add that.
Great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
and that's an important piece. So that would be June of 2023 that we would be doing that. Okay.
That's right.
That would be correct. Yes.
And I think that takes us to the, well, before we move on, I just wanted to just pause there and just look to the BAC. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns from the committee members?
Brad, I think my only concern was that you said only 8 years in your introduction of that topic. Or no, Josh said that the committee was only 8 years.
Yeah, that's and that waterfall year to kind of extend it to 9. We're working on, on maybe getting a decade there. I think that to help you out there, Tom.
Seems like a
Make it
good goal.
nice even number.
Thanks.
You've had well, most of you all have had a long tenured time here to actually set the stage for not just us, but for the community too. So we definitely appreciate the longevity.
Definitely appreciate that, Tom. Thank you for calling out. We appreciate the service and the support, and 8 years extended by 9.
So with the closeout in June 23, the only other thing that kind of comes to mind for me that we've mentioned in past sessions was really the kind of the status of the report, the format for that report and how we would do that. We would really be looking at picking up these final projects that we have, getting advance notice as best as we can to forecast at that last round of summer projects that are really looking to occur in summer of 23, and reporting on everything up to that date, but with that forecasted look of the summer work as well, to kind of what do you want to say, balance the ledger, so to speak, of all works that had been committed underneath the previous bond. So is that everybody else's recollection on that as well, as far as how to? Does that make sense for folks, that we would basically close out everything to date and then everything was forecasted for the summer session? Okay, great. All right. That being said, let's move on to the new items. The bond program closeout process. So just look into the district here on this one, where we had last talked a little about that. It seemed like there was, well, maybe I jumped the gun here and actually speaking to this a little bit. Josh, did you have something on this that you wanted to speak to specifically?
The team put together a slide deck, Brad, so I'll forward to that, and
Great.
Aaron will talk to it, and we will get started. Hold on just a sec here. There we go. All right, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll turn off my camera again just to help improve quality here. So this was a question that came up last time. That's why we brought it here. And really, we just wanted to talk. I mean, this is a pretty quick topic, but someone had asked about how we do the closeout process. So I just wanted to go over that really quickly. So we, during a construction project, we, of course, are managing that project. When the project is complete, we have a transition over to our operations team, or our maintenance department, really is what they're called. So the project goes from the capital projects team, which is the bond teams, to the maintenance team. And what that transition looks like is, it's a few things. It's ensuring that the construction is complete, that it's meeting our quality standards. So going through and, making sure everything is done per the bid documents, per the contract documents, to our specifications. Having a good, complete project is really a big part of what we do. Along with that is making sure the finances are settled. That's a lot of what the Bond Accountability Committee here is reviewing and looking at, but making sure projects are done and complete, and commitments is transferred back into the appropriate budget program reserve, typically for a lot of them. And then kind of the handoff to maintenance involves collecting all the project documents. What are our final as-builts? What are our warranties that we have on the project? Making sure all of those documents get put together in a way that is usable, it's searchable, and handed off to maintenance so they can use it as they go to the next slide, Josh. So there's a lot going on the slide here. I spoke to a little bit of it already, but really we want to make sure that our projects are described correctly. You know, a big part of making sure we're able to maintain buildings is knowing what we put in the buildings. We have a pretty robust set of technical standards. So our, you know, say an HVAC unit, for instance, we specify those units, and we know that they're units that we'll be able to maintain and that our staff is trained on, and you know, has the parts and the abilities to go in and work on those units. And so making sure we have good, clean documents, they have the ability to go in and see, hey, what are the preventative maintenance requirements on these units in this building? Punch list. This is, you know, at the end of the construction project, when we're substantially complete, we're going through and doing a punch list walk. We're comparing the condition of the building to the contract documents to make sure everything was complete and done appropriately. We do that with our design team. We do it with the maintenance staff, usually the building occupants as well, just to make sure there's nothing that, you know, having a bunch of people there, a bunch of eyes on it really helps us make sure we it's always amazing some of the stuff you'll miss and you end up picking up later. But having more people there, people who are focused on their own specific areas of control, really helps. We have a really robust document process at the end of the project.
Aaron, you're coming through broken again.
Huge long checklist just to oh boy.
You're clear now, or do you keep going?
Okay. Financial closeout. There's a lot there, but you know, it boils down to closing out the project commitments. You know, mainly it ends up being the contractor's commitment, also the architect and any other services we have on the project. One part of financial closeout we do really well, I think, is we've been doing, we do audits on the alternative procurement projects. So think CMGC project or design build project. We like to make sure those are open book with our contractor, and we work with a third party firm to go in and do audits to keep them honest, and not just honest, but sometimes there's genuine mistakes that occur too that we like to make sure get picked up. And that has proven to be a valuable use of time and money doing those audits. And then the 1-year warranty walk. So part of the completion, you know, you'll catch a bunch of stuff at punch list. Some things don't come up until within the, you know, you're living in the building and operating it. And so we capture those things during that first year, and the contractors are on the hook to come back after a year and repair anything that goes wrong or a latent defect that was discovered within that first year. And we bring them back and get them to fix it. And then you can go to the next slide here, Josh. So this is talking about just kind of some of the successes that we have, and then also some opportunities to improve the process. I'll just hit on a couple of each of these. Having, you know, when we go to design a new project, having the as-built documents is really important to us. You know, scoping out a project is a great help to have the as-built documents when we go to do that. You know, where are the, especially for remodels, you know, where are the HVAC systems, where are the piping, where is the electrical? Having that stuff accurately documented and handy really saves a lot of time and money and change orders down the road when we go to design those new projects. One really big deal for the school district is asbestos and lead management. So there ends up being a lot of requirements on how we manage asbestos, and making sure we really have good documentation about where that asbestos occurs is really important and really part of this process. And including, when we go in and do an abatement, making sure it gets noted on our management plan, so we don't have to spend time in the future testing and abating something that's already been abated in the past. And with 60 facilities in the district, almost 6 million square feet, it's tough to capture all of that stuff. And I think that's something we do a pretty good job of. Opportunities for improvement. We started doing the facilities condition assessment and building inventory. And I think there's a lot of room to tie our closeout and as-built process together with the facilities condition assessment. We do a pretty good job on the big projects where we have the staff and we have the engineering support to do that. We could stand to improve on the small projects and some of the maintenance projects and stuff too. Getting those integrated with the FCA will be really helpful and really help in that shifting to more of a preventative maintenance and a planning ahead strategy when it comes to maintenance. Would really like to see us have a warranty manager in the district. I think that would go a long ways. We manage the 1-year warranty, but a lot of warranties go well beyond the 1 year, and those warranties usually have a lot of strings attached to them as far as preventative maintenance or things like that they're supposed to be doing to maintain the warranty. And I think it would go a long way to have someone that's managing that process. And then BSD will be implementing a document management system really soon. It's underway right now. I met with IT today about this, and having a unified document management system across the district where we can store all of our archives and warranties and as-builts and everything will be really good. There's not a consistent way that it is done right now, and I think this will help a lot. Okay, that's it for my presentation. A lot of stuff there real quick, so I am open to any questions anybody might have.
I do have a couple of comments if I can, Brad. In the opportunities for improvement, it talks about increasing our maintenance staff. And that's something that I'm working on. They are general fund. That's how they're paid for, that maintenance staff. They're not paid for by the bond. Can't do that. So like we have one plumber in the district. And so we need the ability to grow that maintenance staff so that we have the right number of plumbers, HVAC technicians, our carpentry shop. And so in the FCA, I think you're familiar with the work that McKinstry has done with the condition assessment. We hired McKinstry as well to do an engineer maintenance plan, which is going to take a look at our maintenance team and do gap analysis. They'll look at our current force structure within our maintenance team, and they're going to make recommendations based on industry standards. You should have, based on a district of our size and number of facilities, you should have this size team if you wanted to do it appropriately. So we're working through that with McKinstry. I think in the future, it'd be a topic for the committee to get an update about what that EMP tells us and how it impacts deferred maintenance and what we're looking at to make improvements to our maintenance team. So I just wanted to share that. There are definitely things that we want to pursue. I have to go talk to the district business office. I have to make the point that we need more FTEs within our staff to get to where we need to get to. And that's something that we're working on. But I want to let you know that we've hired McKinstry to help with that gap analysis and making some recommendations from there, using their expertise.
So Josh, I have a quick question. So you mentioned that the personnel for maintenance is paid out of the general budget, but do the capital expenses come out of the bond budget? Capital needed for maintenance?
We have right now we're using like district-wide facility repairs.
Yeah, the $98 million fund.
That's correct. That list was generated by maintenance staff at that time in like 2012, 2013. They put that project list together. Okay. We use the funding now. Like we'll talk about, I additional projects that we have coming in this bond. That'll be in the summer of 23. That'll come out of that essentially deferred maintenance bucket.
Okay, thanks.
And that helps, obviously it helps with improve our facilities. And again, we'll talk more about that here in this meeting.
I have a question. Aaron, what you described is a typical capital improvement process for closeout. And it seems to me that what you've described is a very good practice. But your title here is Bond Program Closeout Process. And I'm wondering, is there anything unique for it being a bond program? That is, do we need to have any kind of report to the stakeholders, particularly the school board, about how what was done ties back to what was promised in the bond originally? Is there anything that unique that the BAC needs to do to kind of close out the program? What you've described is closing out each project, which I think is good, but I guess my expectation was a bigger picture here. Am I missing what we have, or is there something unique that?
I mean, it sounds like you're talking about the closeout report that the committee will be doing next year. You know, kind of saying how we performed relative to the original commitments. I think that's a separate topic, but similar.
Okay, well, maybe I was confused a little bit by the fact that your title was Bond Program Closeout. So
Sure, yeah, maybe project closeout procedures.
all right.
And this is Brad. Just to follow up on Dick's point there, the previous conversations that we have had, we are still looking to partner, you know, with the district to find out how to best roll up the information, right? So, what we've previously discussed is, you know, the bond summary report is great for us doing the financial accounting of the projects, and what you just presented as far as the opportunities and challenges. I mean, I think that goes a long way for bridging that middle gap where we really talk about, you know, how the district performed and where we see some opportunities for the next go round to kind of build in that lasting learning that we've had, you know, over the past, you know, eight plus years. But I think an important piece that Dick really brought up there too is really, you know, how does the district want to demonstrate the benefits in the delivery upon the goals of the bond program? And I think a lot of that has kind of been presented within the 2022 plan as far as what, you know, it plans or hopes to do. But I think that there's an opportunity for us to bring that forward to the committee to really, you know, toot your horns as far as the goals that you've been able to achieve, specific projects that we mentioned at the onset of the bond that we've been able to deliver on, you know, as a community and as a district. And I think that's that key piece. I think that as a BAC that we will then take and receive from the district to basically vet it. Is this true? And I think, you know, moving forward, we're tied in closely to the performance of these projects, but I think we were looking for something to come from the district to really summarize things for us to vet and then to comment on. And we still have some time to do that, but that's what our hope was moving forward.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. We can definitely work on that.
Any other comments from the committee? I mean, is that a fair accounting of where we left that? Looking across the stoic faces, it looks like we're okay. Cheryl has a question. Please,
yeah,
Cheryl.
A question, comment. I know in years past, we've had this conversation about maintenance of the buildings and how maintenance staff are paid out of general fund. I want to make sure I was following what you were saying, Josh. Is there a specific plan in place in terms of the numbers of people that need to be hired to provide in-house maintenance services district-wide? And is it included in the budget? I mean, how do we ensure that these beautiful new assets and these wonderful new improvements are adequately maintained?
The first step, Cheryl, a great question, is going to be the report from McKinstry that we will look at. And, you know, the current structure of the maintenance staff has been through previous reductions and plus ups, and we've gotten to where we're at today for various reasons. I want to take the recommendations from McKinstry and then approach internally the business office and then be able to brief the board. And again, at some point, I think the committee here about what my recommendations are, because it will be an add to the general fund budget by increasing FTEs into our staff. And I want to be able to talk about the level of service that we get with the current team. And then by adding more, adding more FTEs, what does that provide to us? And where's the risk that we're taking? Because we are taking risk right now based on how we're structured. So it's in that step process that recommendation, and we have a budget year, like, you know, like most organizations where we submit a budget ad for personnel, and then that'll be part of our process to do that.
Josh, got a question on that. You say you're using McKinstry, and they're a professional organization. They do a fine job, but are you also, or is the district, is facilities also going out to the buildings and the teachers and the principals and asking them what staffing needs they see? Because I can tell you from going in and out of elementary, middle schools and high schools that there's not one of them that I've ever heard them say they, well, biggest one that I hear about is they have no janitorial service that they can count on a daily basis.
Right.
You mentioned one plumber in the district. They talk about the fact that teachers bringing plungers from home to take care of problems that are going to happen when you've got kids in a school. I've heard a couple of principals talking about the fact that they sometimes wear the hat of the maintenance crew because there are no other resources. So the professional organizations are great, but we have our own people. Are they being brought into the loop, and are they being questioned?
That's something that we'll take a look at, Tom. You know, I think getting the recommendations from McKinstry. The other challenge that we have with our, especially custodial, you know, right now we have 14 vacancies. So it's the current market, being able to hire in custodians alone, 14 vacancies a day. On top of that, when you have probably 20 call outs for vacation, for being sick, for training, for other things, it's a constant battle that we have, especially with custodians and trying to get the right staff. With the trade side, we are working against competitive salaries on the outside, you know, with industry and other organizations that can pay more. So that's part of looking at what do we need to do in order to get more people on board. But I think your point about, you know, at the school level, getting some input is definitely noted, and we can do that as part of this process. And we hear, I mean, and believe me, we hear from our school administrators and staff all the time about the impacts that are happening because we don't have enough custodial staff to be able to man our buildings. We're having to shift employees from elementary schools and basically take the custodial staff from there, stop working earlier in the evening, like evening shift, and move them over to a secondary school so we can support our larger schools at night. So the things that we have to work through, but there are definitely impacts that are happening on a daily basis.
Josh, would it make sense to hire an outside agency that is outsourced, especially the custodial functions, to a third party? Is that something that's worth looking at?
Well, we have unions, so we have a union that we have to be able to talk to and work through that. it's definitely come across me and, across my mind to be able to provide contract support, especially on the custodial side, to be able to augment our staff as we need to, especially when we're dealing with all these vacancies. And it's an opportunity that I'm taking a look at to be able to help our staff, because our staff is, because there's a lot of gaps in our positions, they're overworked. We're asking them to take overtime. We don't have to, it's not mandatory, but they are working a lot of overtime to be able to catch up as well. But looking at contract, especially on custodial, something that I'm taking a look at to be able to help at least get us through, with the hopes that we have, we're able to fill the vacancies and get through that.
So, Sunita, we've got a question on the phone there, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I like the idea about going to, I certainly feel that you guys do need more FTEs, but we should get the opinions from the principals, the schools itself, because when I go and visit the schools and I ask them about the buildings, I always hear, oh, we had a leaky roof, and like the carpets were not good, or I think we need to go into our schools and make a list of what is it that we need, and work with McKinley. I have no problem working with a third party, but we should make the use of our schools too, the school administrators too, and find out what exactly we need too. So that's my piece. That's in my experience in going and visiting schools, I'm hearing a lot about. And I always go back to Josh, and Josh, you have been great in responding and helping out. So
great, thank you for that feedback, Sunita. And another thing too I look at is our custodial foremen at the schools. They are the front door to the maintenance and custodian, for the schools. They're our custodians. they are our eyes and ears there. So there are times when there's communication that can be improved. So we're working on that too. Being able to have an administrator, building administrator, talk to their custodial foreman and make sure the two are connected, because there are things that may be happening in the maintenance and even the bond world where the custodian is aware, the foreman, but the principal is not aware. And so we're looking at that, opportunities there to help improve that.
okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, you guys. That's an important piece to kind of connect the dots, especially with 80% of the cost of long-term life cycle costs of a facility go into the operations and maintenance. We're looking at the 20% on the front end, but with that long O&M tail that we know is out there. I think there's some valid points there to really help us learn into the future. And one question I had on that was just, when we're talking about these things, either in closeout or with an eye on the future, does the district have a defined service level that you have for your assets, or different types of assets in place, or is that something that you're hoping to use the McKinstry vendor to help set up? And if so, to Cheryl and Sunita's point, is there a potential for that to be informed also by user input?
Right, that we are looking for that from the report. There are standards that they're going to reference and say industry standard, APPRA, here you go, here's what you should maintain to if you want to take care of your facilities the right way. And so that comes with the appropriate staffing that they'll look at based on those standards. But taking building input, staff input, at the schools is an important thing too.
Thanks for that clarification. I just want to make sure I'm going around the room here. With David or Prashant, since you're on the call, also, any questions or comments from your side too?
Not from my side. The question's been answered.
Thanks, David.
I'm good on my side, Brad. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. And Tom Q, anything from your side also?
I have one quick comment and a question, I guess. I always I'm glad that Josh and the team are going to be looking for options to augment staff temporarily, but just having been in a lot of discussions over the years about the value of having our own district employees be in the schools as custodians and the incredible relationships that they build with students and faculty, I just think can't be overstated. And I hope that continues to be the primary method for supporting our custodial requirements, notwithstanding the short-term gaps and crisis problems that you have to solve, Josh. So just want to call that out as a comment. And then a question for Aaron, just on the Aaron had the timeline slide that culminated in the end of the 1-year warranty. And so I guess the implication of that is the closeout process typically lasts less than a year, but is there sort of a guideline and number of months to get to the financial closeout? Just sort of a rough idea.
It really depends on the project. I would say we definitely shoot to do it within that first year. Really, we want to do it as quickly as possible, but that's not always possible. And a project that's super complicated like 5 Oaks takes a lot longer. But I would say generally speaking, we shoot for financial closeout 6 months after project completion.
Thank you. That's great.
All right. Well, thanks for the conversation on that. I think, looking forward, that was a new item, but I think looking forward to, as a team, we want to continue to probably for the next session to outline some things as we see as far as a bond program, the assembly of all the different projects, kind of building upon this, and talk to you about a couple of ideas that we could put as far as a general format. So before we're officially done kind of with the calendar year or the school year, to at least frame that out so that as a committee, we can discuss that before we launch into this kind of bridge year. I think that would be an opportunity with the team. Looking at the next item, we've got, I know we've been waiting and I appreciate everybody being patient here, but hearing from the project staff for Beaverton Hills and Raleigh Hills on the design side. I know we've been flies on the wall for part of the process, and Dick's been a little closer than a lot of us. So definitely be good for us to kind of get smart on everything that's happened.
Yeah, so thank you. I will say a quick word here and then kick it over to Jeff. So one of the big lessons learned we talked about previously was, from the 2014 bond, from Mountainside especially, was we really wanted to do a good job of doing the due diligence up front. So figuring out that project scope, really having a good idea of what that is, getting good cost estimates, getting multiple cost estimates that are vetted with, industry construction partners, and making sure we really have a good, complete understanding of the project before we step into it. So that's what these two efforts here are, what we're doing. And so we'll have Jeff and Megan and Eric talk a little bit about the process, and then show you where we're at with the conceptual design and talk about what goes into those budgets. So with that, actually, I'm not sure who's up first.
I think it'll be me. Josh, if you want to just jump through to the first slide here, I'll talk about just a little bit of a summary for our design process, how both projects were similar, and then jump into the Raleigh Hills, and then hand it off for the Beaverton High School team as well. So like Aaron said, the conceptual design phase that we went through on both of these projects, the main goal was to gain the most cost certainty possible in order to generate the numbers for that modernization bucket for the upcoming bond. Both schools, both projects, Beaverton High and Raleigh Hills, the design teams and the more focused teams had a thorough process for gathering feedback throughout this design phase. Both projects identified a small advisory committee, design advisory committee of folks who were committed to this process, this early phase, and really in charge of distilling information that's gathered and helping guide decision-making process throughout this early phase. With the help of folks at the schools, the principals, and our team as well, we identified different focus groups at each school that we needed to connect with for feedback. We also reached out through different forums and how to connect with those focus groups, as well as other ways of gathering information like shadowing within the schools, listening sessions, staff surveys, community surveys. And Megan and Jeff will talk a little bit more about Beaverton as well, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about Raleigh Hills. But just as an overview, we went through all of these, both projects went through a similar process. And then we went through a kind of a physical constraints and opportunities at each site, documenting those with the due diligence report that were created by the design teams for both projects. Yeah, if we can go to that next slide, that'd be great, Josh, thanks. So Raleigh Hills, we did some surveys of the community, the staff at the school. We surveyed the staff at the 4 prototype elementary schools from this current bond to get feedback on what they saw was working, what opportunities they saw for us as we go through, that we can apply to this next project, which it has the same program based on our ed specs. So the same program as all of the prototype schools, the same technical standards, but it is its own school. It's not trying to fit that prototype on another site here. We went through quite an effort to make sure that design could fit on the 4 sites that we already did. And this is a unique site and with its own opportunities and challenges. And so this is a unique school in terms of the form, materiality, that kind of thing. With all the feedback that we gathered, as well as the design, our design advisory committee really narrowed it down and came up with 4 guiding principles that we could kind of keep as a touchstone going forward as we went through the design, and said, as we were making design decisions, did those really keep in line with these guiding principles that we formulated through the feedback in our design advisory committee. So we came up with those 4 principles that you see there: community centeredness, wellness, relationships at the core, within the building, within the community, and making sure that every student is successful. And those actually pair up really well with the district's pillars for learning as well, kind of coincidentally. So the design considerations, we kept those guiding principles in mind as we went through this. Site safety and site access were big design considerations for our site layout. Where buses enter, where parents enter, how students enter and exit the school, how the public gets into the school when the school day is active. So we really had to figure out how best to work our site access so cars can get off of Shoals Ferry, which is a major issue right now that they run into out there at the school during arrival and departure times. How best to get the students into the site and into the building safely. That was really a design consideration we went back to often. Something else that we heard a lot was the small school feel of Raleigh Hills as it is now. Even though it's kind of sprawling and to get from the kindergarten to the library is a long ways in the current school, they still have a small school feel. We heard from the students and the staff, and they really wanted to maintain that. So the way the classrooms are situated and how we created houses for each grade level really breaks down this what's essentially a 100,000 square foot building into more manageable pieces for the staff and the students. This last piece was the connection, respecting the past and then embracing the future. The community feels a strong connection to the kind of the look and the feel of the original library portion of this school, which is one of the worst seismic pieces within the district. And so in order to honor that library, our design is maintaining some of the architectural language around it and the materials of the library without physically leaving the library there and trying to build around it. So that was another piece that we would touch back on as we went through our design decisions. If you can go to the next slide, Josh, that'd be great. So this is our site plan layout as it stands right now. Again, we are very early in the design process for the whole school, for the whole project. So this is, like I said, where we are now. Things will change and develop and continue to really hone in on specifics. We are still coordinating with the AHJs, with Washington County and the city of Beaverton on specific requirements. But we have had a lot of discussions with them thus far and feel pretty confident that there's not going to be any major adjustments needed from where we are right now. The school itself has a very well maintained baseball field that's used by the community a lot, and a running track around it that was installed by the PTO there. And we're planning to maintain those, both of those pieces of program. The building itself is set up close to Shoals Ferry. That's both a planning requirement and something that we wanted to maintain at the school to really give a recognizable element to the site there and not try and push it back further into the site. The shape, the kind of plan layout, we call it basically an E plan. So we've got a spine that runs basically north-south, and then classroom wings that work off on the right-hand side. And then the more public pieces like the gym and the commons off on the opposite side of the classroom, of that spine to access the classroom. Yeah, where Josh has his cursor there. And really this E scheme creates a very efficient floor layout where we can stack the same floor plan on top of each other. It cuts down on travel time for students and staff, increases the visibility, and really allows a lot of access to daylight in what at the park side or closest side to the baseball field is a 3-story building. So this really, like I said, allows a lot of points of ways to drive daylight into those classrooms that are in each of those wings, and really help improve the circulation within the building. You can see we've separated the bus and parent drop off on either side of the school, really trying to create that safer environment for arrival and departure times. We're aligning our access on that kind of on the right hand side of the school with a intersection that's there across the street, and we have a left turn lane there so we can allow parents to turn in and do drop off and pick up and still let traffic continue to flow on the site, which is a huge problem right now out there on the site, honestly. So like I said, this is early. It's still in development, but it is kind of where we are right now. If you want to go to the next slide, Josh, this is a little bit about the budget. Like Josh, or as Aaron mentioned, we have our own cost estimators plus our design team carried a cost estimator during this early phase so that we could kind of reconcile and make sure everybody's understanding scope elements that are in here. This is based on a square footage takeoff of what we're assuming are going to be our building systems and our materials at the school. The total current estimate you see there is $61.2 million. It has a healthy contingency for design, a 15% design contingency. We're planning escalation up until the midpoint of construction. So the construction is planned to start in the spring of 2024 and be a 2-year construction cycle. So this is planning an escalation through up to the summer of 2025. So we've got our escalation plan. We've got a good design contingency at this point. And this takes into account, this is assuming abating the existing building, which we know will be needed for hazardous materials, and this is also including assuming all of the site improvements on Shoals Ferry that we know of, including what we're hoping will be a full traffic signal at that intersection. Our budget that we're planning to move forward is a $54 million budget. So right now we're about 12% over that with our current estimate at 61 million. So that's something that as we are getting the proposal from the design team to continue in phase 2 once we pass the bond. That's kind of our first task, is to come up with options and really have that targeted design based on our budget. So of, like I mentioned, $54 million. So this school is slightly larger than the prototype schools because we have a couple specialized program pieces with pre-K there and a few other wraparound services for the community, is driving the school building itself square footage up a little bit. It's not very much. It's probably maybe 2% of the overall square footage that we're dealing with. But this, I think maybe I will. This is kind of the information that I had for Raleigh Hills. We're going to touch on we've got a slide for the schedule on both projects, but I'm going to let Megan and Jeff talk about Beaverton High School, and then maybe we can wrap up with questions on both after Beaverton.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. I'm going to go ahead. So Megan and I are leading the Beaverton High School conceptual design process. So I'm going to go ahead and let Megan cover these first couple of slides. As you'll see, they're fairly similar, as Eric explained, in process and how we arrived at these conceptual designs and conceptual budgets. So yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll let her kick it off, and she's going to go through some of the things we did at Beaverton High, which were similar to what Eric did, but we also had an eye on, we're looking at a high school situation, and we wanted to manage those young adults that were in the school and experiencing that school day in and day out. So we really focused on engaging with the students at the school and held a myriad of sessions with those students to really understand what they needed out of their learning environments. So that was something a little bit different that we focused on, really to understand what the kids wanted out of their spaces and out of their learning environment. So I'm gonna let Megan chat a little bit more about that and how we got where we did.
So yep, we did over 30 listening and learning sessions. We really worked hard to forefront the voices of historically underserved communities. So we did a lot of these in affinity session groups. We did do a lot of students, and we were able to take advantage of their Beaver Lodge, which is like a study hall period. So we got good participation from them in that. We also outreach to parents and community members and of course staff. And through those roughly 30 sessions, we brought all that feedback back to our DAC, so our Design Advisory Committee, just like Eric was talking about. And they were able to distill all that information down to 10 guiding principles. So I have 5 shown here. And I'm just going to run through those really quick. The first one is supporting neurodiverse learners and social emotional health. I think we all, when we came back from COVID, found how very, very important this was, just as students were adjusting back to being in school. Creating a variety of spaces to promote meaningful and authentic relationships between students between each other, students and staff, and honestly, students and community, because this is, when we're done, going to be a community asset. Creating flexible and adaptable spaces. This really speaks to creating a variety of different types of learning environments, and knowing that we're not going to know, the building needs to last 50 to 100 years, and we don't know what education is going to look like in 50 to 100 years. So we need to design the building to be adaptable, and that is everything from how furniture is selected, but also how plumbing is roughed in, and how we can use the spaces and change the spaces in the future. Another one that came up was strong connections to nature. So in the current site, there are classrooms with no windows, and those are just really dark, unpleasant spaces in the winter. It's just very gloomy. And so we want to try to provide connections to nature and outdoor spaces, even though, yes, we're in Oregon, people still like to go out and, eat lunch outside when the weather's nice, or even when the weather's a little misty.
And the site currently focuses, kind of functions as a campus, right? Because the way it's spread out, and the students actually really enjoy that, but they want to make sure that they have cover, right? But they can still get out and experience, be out in the sun, in the rain, and those factors. Was one of the things that stood out that they want to keep moving forward in their new facility.
Yeah. The next one is really celebrating diversity. So creating environments that are culturally expressive. We're not trying to create a bunch of white boxes. We're trying to honor the diversity and celebrate the diversity that is Beaverton High. Creating multiple student-owned spaces. So we found that students don't really have spaces that they can call their own. There's one like student hub, student common space, but it's very loud. And so we're looking at doing something like that, but with more options in it, so that everybody can feel like they have like a safe space to like hang out and chill, like between classes or mount artwork, just make the spaces their own, like that it's their school too. The importance of creating non-binary spaces for our students, that I'm just gonna leave that. Optimizing wayfinding throughout the school, and even figure out where the front door is for anybody who has been to Beaverton High. That can be a challenge in its own right. And the building has been added on to so many times that we have hallways that dead into nothing or go around a curve, or they're not intuitive to figure that out. So we really want to improve that, make the building easy to navigate, and not necessarily rely all on signage and languages, like more like icon in like it's intuitive, so that you're not reliant on signage, on language. Create specialized spaces to inspire life beyond high school. So yes, we're looking at CTE spaces, but I think that also includes all of our art spaces, 2D art, graphic art. Currently Beaverton High has those programs, but they're not in spaces that are made for them. They're in the old wood shop and the old welding room. Like those, they're making it work, and that's great. And that really speaks to the strength of our staff, but wouldn't it be nice if we created something purposeful? And then the last one, and one of my favorites, is trying to maintain the unique BHS character or the quirk of the building. So again, it's kind of speaking back to that idea that we are not trying to create a white institutional building. We're trying to create something that has vibrancy, that speaks to the community, that speaks to the school, and all the tradition that's steeped in the site. So it's kind of like we did due diligence twice. We did due diligence with the people and how they interact with the site and how they experience the site and things that they see that are positive and things that need help. And then we actually did due diligence on the site with all of our engineers and the design team and the city of Beaverton. And so what we kind of found in that is that Erickson, which is the number one, has to remain, I pointed with my own arrow, doesn't work, has to remain open. The city will not allow us to close that. There's also a floodplain to the south that runs through the fields. Floodplain means you really can't put a building in it. The city, even with parking reductions, will require 432 parking spots. And the existing building, which is the big light blue blocks in the middle, needs to stay there while we construct the new building, because we don't have a swing site, or the students need to stay on site while the building's being built. And with that, we can go to the next slide and I can show you what we're kind of came up with. So this, just like Eric's design, is not fully designed yet. It looks really nice and pretty, and that's what we pay architects for, but it's not fully vetted. These are currently just spaces and program. It's to scale, but things could shift. The building, we kind of show where classrooms might be, but science classrooms might be in a different area than where they're shown here. But what's really important is the concepts of the design. And so those things will remain the same. So locating the building to the north and locating it all together, that concept will remain, because that allows us to maintain the existing building while we're building this building and grouping all the educational spaces together. Now, people don't have to cross Erickson, students don't cross Erickson during the day to go to their other class. So it's safety from like a traffic standpoint, but it's also safety. We'll be able to secure this more easily. Like there's no fencing. I mean, there is fencing at BHS, but it's open. Like anybody can walk through the site right now. And so that's not great.
It also gives us, the way it's laid out, we've completely reconfigured the traffic flow up there right now as well, which is going to allow us for a separate student and staff parking area, and then a completely new flow for the buses over there as well. Because right now they stack up on Erickson because they're not able to get off the street and do drop off. Then you have kids running, off their buses in the street on the sidewalk. So this is a much safer environment here where we're talking about as well.
Yeah. So not only are we considering that bus traffic and parent traffic, like automobile traffic, but we're also considering pedestrian traffic. So one of the main features in this design is a pedestrian plaza that runs north to south through the site, connects visually to Cedar Hills. And then there's also a pedestrian path across Second. And so that exists now. Second, we have closed and it's part of our site, but we'll maintain that connection. And I think that this is generally really important to provide connection to the community. And like, as I was saying previously, security is important, but we still need to, for football game, we need to have those clear means of travel, even if it's walking or biking. The other thing is, yes, we're separating parent and bus traffic. We don't 100% have it sorted out right now. It is shown on Erickson, but we're working with transportation and our traffic engineer to figure out what the best solution, and the city to find out what the best solution is on that. So further development will happen. I think the parking lots might not look like you see them today, but they'll be roughly there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I was to say, the other thing to note is, all the fields here are similar in their arrangement right now, but they will all be synthetic fields and laid out differently so they can utilize those fields more of the year being synthetic. We're also hoping to be able to light most of those fields so they get more hours of use so they can run more programming on those fields. Because back to the last slide, we talk about our site constraints. Well, this is a tiny site in the middle of an urban zone where we don't have the same space where we have at a lot of our other high schools. So we have to get really creative on how we do use the space we have there. So by laying the space out this way and by doing synthetic fields and then having lighting, we're hoping to be able to give them more programming time that they have to use there, since they don't have the space to use like we do at some of our other high school facilities.
The one other thing that I would say that you will see develop if the bond passes and we're able to move through design is, I'm not sure if you guys have looked on the website, but the building looks very white. That's not how it will be. We'll be working on picking those exterior finishes, picking those interior finishes. And I wouldn't be surprised if the arrangement of the courtyard changes around as we settle like what type of classrooms go where and what programming elements go where. We have kind of a rough idea, but I can see as we're moving those floor plates around, that would change slightly.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would note is that currently we have the school designed for a student capacity, and it's programmed at a 1,500 student capacity, which is in alignment with kind of their enrollment projections. We do have and have built-in capacity to add on to the school. You'll see there's a little dotted line here that says future addition. That space there is meant purposely to be able to build onto the school and be able to build the school up to a 2,200 student capacity, which is what our other high schools or what our ed spec is built for right now. So we've built and designed that into this school so we can expand it in the future if enrollment goes that way.
Yeah, the one other thing with that too is, so we built this, we're designing the school for 1,500, but if we need to take it up to 2,200, all we have to do is add like general classroom wings. So all of our core spaces, our theater, our gym, our commons, are all sized for 2,200 students. So in the like common spaces, we're a little bit oversized, but that allows us for more flexibility. And if we have to go up to 2,200, it'll be a much easier add-on addition.
Right. It's ready to go by having those larger spaces across the building moving forward. That way, it's another thing that we're trying to do to future-proof the building as we move forward.
And with that, Jeff, I am done. If you'd like to do budget.
Yeah, one thing we were wondering, I don't know, we can go over the budget here. So this is very similar to the Raleigh Hills process here. So currently, the total budget conceptual estimate is $253 million for the whole program over at Beaverton High School. And I know one of the things you guys were really interested in, it was talking about what kind of contingencies and market volatility and pandemic kind of reserves we were building into these projects. So that's what we wanted to highlight here, right? So in our total estimate of the $253 million, we have, similar to Raleigh Hills, we have an escalation to the midpoint of our construction of 16.2%. I think Eric's is like 15.5, right? Somewhere around there. Right, Eric? I think it's very similar to that. And then we also have a design contingency currently built in that conceptual estimate of 5%, construction contingency of 3%. We have a market volatility and like a pandemic contingency of 3.5 built in there. And then we also have our owner's contingency on top of that. And one of the unique things that we've done in this process is we have a group of 3 different, we have 2 cost estimators working with us currently. And then we also brought on a general contractor to really help us with this conceptual budgeting process. So they brought in real life cost examples from recent projects that they have costing on, and we brought that into our cost model and reconciled that between the teams to try to come up with the best costing we could here. So I mean, that represents a total of like 8 to 9 high school projects that have all been built in the last 5 years from 3 different sources. So we're hoping to really use that to triangulate this budget and give us the best cost certainty moving forward. And it's also not just on a whole building basis. Those costs were broken down by areas like auditoriums, general education, athletic facilities. So we priced each of those separately to build this budget. We also looked at hazardous materials abatement from projects that have been recently done at a very similar type of building in Salem to come up with like our hazardous abatement, because we know that building's old and there's quite a bit of hazardous materials there. So we have that built in. And then we plan to use a target value design methodology moving forward, which is basically setting our project goal and then working in groups to make sure we meet that budget and we don't exceed it. So that's a little bit unique in how we're going to move through this. Other than that, the building right now is going to be around 295,000 square feet. You'll see we have building costs here of 109 million, and we're about 562 square feet. That's with all of our markups rolled in there, and then it's 373 feet per square foot without markups, right? We do have estimates for on-site improvements and then off-site right-of-way improvements also all built into these this budget process right now. So yeah, that's kind of how our budget is built there. And then the next steps for both of our projects here is just kind of highlighting how we're going to be moving through these projects in the next, with the hopeful passage of the bond, what the plan is for these projects here. So I'll just start with Beaverton. Our plan is, we're hopeful the bond passes here in May, and then we move right into our schematic design process. And we plan to do a alternative delivery process, CMGC, for this project. And so we plan to solicit for that CMGC right away, get them on board immediately, and bring them into the SD process and the design. Some of these timelines are tentative, but we shooting for DD around November of 22, roll through into CD in June of 23. We'll probably set the GMP with the CMGC contractor there mid-summer of 23, and go into pre-construction in the fall, or excuse me, the spring of 24, and we plan to begin construction 24. The building section itself should be complete by the fall of 26, and then we'll still have all the site improvements. So after we get the front building built, we'll then have to go and demolish the existing building, do parking lot improvements, and some of the outstanding athletic improvements that last year. So then we hope to have the complete site turned over the fall of 2020 at Beaverton High School. So Eric, I'll let you roll through Raleigh Hills' kind of milestone schedule.
Yeah, unlike Beaverton High School, who's planning, that team is planning to do a CMGC alternative procurement, we're planning to do a hard bid process, pre-qualified. So that would mean we'd ask for proposals from contractors that are interested in the project during the construction documents phase. And then we would narrow the prospective pool of bidders down. And then those pre-qualified contractors would provide hard bid on the project. Basically, we're making sure we have capable, competent contractors bidding on the project first, and then kind of let the market dictate with the hard bid process from those few that we've qualified. We are planning to hire a constructability review firm, similar to what happened with ACMA, which was a successful process there. So we'll have a constructability review third party hired by us of the architect's drawings, architects and engineers drawings, to really kind of comb through everything there and make sure that we have as few change orders as we can from documentation issues. So we're on a similar timeline to what Jeff said. Assuming the bond passes, right now I'm going through negotiating a proposal with the architect so that hopefully we can kick off right in June after the bond passes, roll right into schematic design, DD in September, mid-September, kind of fall, and then we'll roll into CDs the beginning of 2023, and then that process will take us through the fall of 23, at which point we'll get into our permitting bidding phase, start construction the summer of 2024, and have the school all ready by fall 2026. So that's kind of the milestone overview of both projects. And I don't believe we have anything else, any other information to load onto the committee here for these two. So I don't know. Josh.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, yeah, I think this is all we had.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great presentation. Really appreciate the design teams, making yourselves available to actually talk to us about that and in your approach to the work. So I want to open it up to the BAC. I know that there's going to be some questions about both of those projects. So I just wanted to turn it back to the committee now. Any questions from folks?
The major opposition that I can see to the bond right now, at least in reading the tea leaves here, is cost. And when I think that Mountainside cost what, 185 million?
Yeah, it was about 180 million. Yep.
180 million. And you're estimating that Beaverton High School will be what?
253.
253.
Line item budget.
3. So that's $70 million more. How do you intend to justify that to people who are campaigning to vote no on this bond?
You want me to take that one?
Yes, if you've got an answer for that, that'd be great.
Well, first I would say that rather than justification, I would use the word education, because as the district's position, of course, is one of education and not advocacy. So we're very careful about that. The board does the advocating. But when we talk to groups, we give them real life examples about what we're seeing as far as inflated costs. Everything's going up, right? And construction is no exception, and might actually be leading the way. So in terms of costs and labor, we sort of lay that out. And one of the arguments is that it's not going to get any cheaper. So if we wait 6 months, or if we even had a year to wait, the cost is not going to lower, it's only going to increase. So the value proposition is in an earlier passage of the bond.
Yeah, a couple of things I'd add to that. Of course, this project is going to take place nearly 10 years later than Mountainside did. And 10 years worth of inflation it adds up really quickly. And, you know, you can see that in the pricing. You know, the other thing, it's like Shelley said, you know, is you can see that we went through a pretty extensive due diligence process, vetted the costs across many different groups who work on this day in and day out. You look at the cost of this school compared to the cost of high schools being built anywhere else, you know, in Portland, and it's right in line with those costs. So like Shelley said, it's kind of a matter of educating, you know, this as far as we can tell, this is the cost of it. It's not like there's a runaway budget or anything here. As far as we can tell, these are the appropriate costs for the project.
Thanks for that. We have a question from Sunita or Dick, did you have any follow-up on that?
Yeah, the only follow-up is throughout my career, I have had to deal with clients and customers who think that what I'm providing or what the company that I was with was providing was too expensive. And to tell them that, oh, that's the way it is, didn't sell well. And so as you think about responding to the public, and I presume we will have to over the next month or so, I would really think out the argument on what we've done to try to hold the costs in line. What cost savings have been built into this, looking at maintenance costs and being able to justify lower maintenance costs in the future. I just, you know, I know enough about this business to agree with you that costs go up, escalation is a fact of life, and there are going to be overruns probably, and we have to have contingency to cover those, but that doesn't explain it. When you talk about educating the public, I think that you really need to get collective heads together to be persuasive. So just
point taken, Dick. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Dick. It's always going to be a concern in education. There's a lot to learn on that if people have time, that's for sure. Sunita, please.
Thank you, Dick. That was an excellent question. And yeah, since we have to go out and advocate, it's good to have that thinking cap on and think about things. So I have a few questions. So one is what is the contingency that I might have missed that part that you are keeping? I know that for Valley Hills, you said 54 and 60, whatever. There was a buffer there. What is it for Beaverton High School? Is there a buffer, like a contingency amount? What was that?
Yeah, thanks, Sunita. So just looking at the estimate here, there's adding up all the different types of contingency buckets, there's different ones. There's escalation and market volatility and design contingency. There's about 50 million in contingency right now.
Okay. And the other question thank you for that. And the other question that I have is, when we compare this with Mountainside, is this a bigger school? Is this more square footage, or are you doing more here than you did in Mountainside?
It is roughly similar to Mountainside in overall size. It's a smaller site though.
Yeah.
How many kids did you build it for there? Like this one, you said it's 1,500, but some of the spaces are being built for like a bigger, like for 2,200 kids. How many kids was that one built for?
Mountainside was 2,200.
It was 2,200. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's good. that we are, at least some of the spaces, we are doing it for 2,200 capacity, because after spending this kind of money, it would be kind of hard if we have to say, hey, we want more money to build more buildings, you know? But if we build for 2,200, right now is our capacity 1,500, or is it expected to become 1,500?
So looking at the enrollment projections for the school, we think, you know, our projection goes out 10 years, and within that time, it looks like 1,500 is adequate. So
okay.
So designing the core space of the building to 2,200 is really just, you know, we don't have the land to build more high schools in Beaverton. So at some point, if, you know, density increases and we have to add high school capacity, this is how we're creating that future capacity.
Yeah.
And remember, Sunita, this was based on that PSU growth study. Yeah, that actually shows that Beaverton High School would have a decline.
Okay. Okay. Also, I know that this may have been answered in the previous one, but I heard that it's going to, both the schools will finish the construction in 26, right?
So Raleigh Hills will be done and open in 26. For Beaverton, it'll actually be fully complete the following year in 2027, but the main building itself is projected to be complete in 2026.
Okay. And I think that Beaverton High has space for the kids. They don't have to be moved while the construction is going on. Is that true?
That's correct. Yep. The plan and the location of the building was, you know, designed with that in mind, with keeping the kids on site.
What about the Raleigh Hills? They will be bused to another school?
That's correct. Yeah. And that's something that we're still in the process of determining which school that is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Questions from the committee? Just looking to Renu, Tom Q, Tom F, David Prashant.
Yeah, I have a question. So do you have per square foot costs from other cities with a similar cost of living index for schools?
I know looking at the RLB, who does, they publish quarterly reports. I know for the elementary school for Raleigh Hills, it's very similar. It's about $420 a square foot for a primary school level building right now, in other places that are similar to Portland, which is right around, if we take out or not considering offsite improvements, that's pretty much what Raleigh Hills is coming out to. Very similar.
And we used, I was mentioning, we used several high school buildings in our cost model, and those range from Sherwood to Mountain View High School up in Vancouver to North Eugene High School, Milwaukee High School, South Salem High School. So those are other metropolitan areas in Oregon, right? They're not representative of across the country, but they're not just in the Portland area. So.
Just following up with the cost conversation, just in thinking about Raleigh Hills, I noticed that you're doing, you're managing costs for the Beaverton school, Beaverton High School with CMGC is a, great way to bring your contractor in alongside early. Just curious about the thought process with Raleigh Hills, and if you're concerned at all potentially with the cost growth that might happen with a hard bid on that project, which already might be pressing the cost ceiling a little bit for where we're hoping to deliver that school.
Good question. So we looked at this a lot over the 2014 bond in, how we get best value through procurement, and had a lot of success doing pre-qualified hard bids. We did it for a series of the prototype elementary schools and for ACMA. and really found that that delivered the best value to us. It's a little, makes bid days a little bit more exciting, certainly, but we feel that we got really good value out of that. And doing, Eric talked about going through and doing the constructability review through a third party, and felt that that was really an effective process. So the reason to do Raleigh Hills that way and not Beaverton High School has to do with the construction market in Portland. We can get bidders, we can get general contractors to bid a $50 million project, hard bid, but nobody would touch Beaverton High School on a hard bid. It's such a complicated project. We wouldn't want to do it anyways, but Beaverton High School is relatively straightforward, and we feel that that would give us the best value.
Gotcha. And just curious for both of the schools, mentioning kind of building upon the district pillars and thinking about equity and specifically gender equity. Just curious if you're going to be including, universal bathrooms and restrooms and spaces like that, and if that's being incorporated into the ed spec moving forward.
We do, yeah. We include single occupancy restrooms in the facility, so that was part of the current bond, and we'll continue that in the next bond.
Yeah, like we have, for instance, like a 10% buffer on our spaces to accommodate that in Beaverton High School, for instance. It's above of what's in the current ed spec. So locker rooms, bathrooms, things like that are slightly oversized.
And Jeff, am I correct that that's feedback too that we received from some of those student groups?
Yes, that's definitely what has happened. By reaching out to these affinity groups, we've really identified some areas where they need support, right? And that was one of the themes that Megan mentioned came out of that, was them really wanting to have those spaces. So that's why those are included, and that extra capacity is built in right now.
Are there any sustainability elements taken into account with either of these schools or both of the schools?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Megan.
Oh, I was going to say they both have the 1.5 solar built in, but I'd say more than that, we're always looking at life cycle costs. Thank you. And so as we move through these next phases and really begin to start picking our equipment and making those system choices, we'll be reviewing all of that. And we did some high level for at least Beaverton High. I'm sure Eric did too.
Yeah, we had some HVAC charrettes at the very beginning of the process to talk about levels of systems, right? Because of where we're at in the design process, we're not actually selecting systems, but we looked at different systems and their performance and their costs, right? And that's what we built in, was what we think is the most sustainable and has the best life cycle cost into the current budget. And all that stuff will get further developed as we actually design the building. But we also looked at things like solar and daylighting and that kind of stuff will be incorporated as we move forward.
Yeah, and at Raleigh Hills, and I'm sure it will be the same at Beaverton High School, there's the design team also is carrying an envelope consultant who is, helping to really make the envelope of the building as energy efficient as possible. So that, which really, when you talk about sustainability, right, there's those passive things like the solar, but making sure that your building is efficient. Envelope is a huge cost saver from an energy standpoint.
And looking at maintenance of the buildings, like we talked about earlier, that envelope is one of the easiest things that you don't really have to necessarily maintain over some of these very complex mechanical systems. So that's definitely a focus for both teams, is trying to have a high performance envelope.
Speaking of envelope, are you also taking into account potentially having the designer carry a building envelope consultant, and more specifically to around leaks, given our climate here? I'm sure that's a big headache for Josh, and just having that certainty around a watertight facility.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been one of the funnest presentations I've seen in a long time. Thank you, Capital Projects team. It's a joy to see this design work and to see the possibilities. So hopefully May will be a good month, and we'll continue our journey forward with these key projects in our community. And speaking on behalf of the city and the Community Development Department, we are very happy to be continuing our long and wonderful relationship with you guys. It's really amazing to me over the last 8 years how this program has grown, and even with staffing changes, the talent and the caliber of delivery on the projects is quite impressive. So we're proud to be your partner and look forward to working with y'all on these projects starting this summer.
Thank you.
I don't mean to put a downer in here after Cheryl's very nice conversation there, but I do have to throw on my banker hat, which I know some of you have heard too much of over the last 8-9 years. But I'm getting asked the questions as I talk to stakeholders, and they know that I've been involved with the current bond for 11 years, actually, the precursor to it even starting or being passed. So a question, and I've got to try and give you this so that I can put it out there correctly, but the 2014 bond was a $680 million bond that ended up being 808 million, or about 19% higher than what it started. I wish we had the finance people on here so I would feel more comfortable asking them the question, because you guys, I wouldn't expect any of you to be able to drill down and say, yes, we've made accommodations for this. If we're looking at 728 million here, are we going to have another 19% overage and end up at 860 million this time around? And if that were to happen, are we going to have the added funding sources that we've been so fortunate to have through the 2014? And it started with I believe a $60 million bond premium, and then a $30 million bond premium, and then the interest earned on both of those bond premiums. There are a couple of others, but in looking at this from the financial world of the district, are they anticipating or have they projected with what the economic conditions are now and what they're projected to do over the next 8 years? Are they looking at us having the good fortune of having some additional funding that does really come out of the blue, which is those bond premiums? They weren't expected before the 2014 bond was approved. And again, I don't throw this out because I'm trying to be difficult. I throw it out because I'm being asked these questions, because people know, number one, that I've been involved with this one, and that my background is finance, and it's lending on projects, not necessarily to school districts, but big commercial projects. And they want to drill down and say, okay, if it's 728 versus 680, we can live with that, but are we going to have a 19% increase? And if so, has there been input and discussion about how do we cover that? So I don't know if that's understandable or not.
Yeah, well, there's a few different questions there. I'll try and answer it. No, that, as you know, Tom, the added, going from 680 to 800 and whatever it is, 808. It was because of the premiums. I mean, certainly it was good, and we were fortunate that we had that with some of the other project overages and everything, but that increase wasn't something that was projected early on. And And it's certainly not something we're projecting for this 2022 bond. I mean, we've talked about it a bunch here, but we've gone through a lot of extra due diligence. We've really worked hard to incorporate those lessons learned when it comes to estimating projects ahead of time and making sure this initial budget really is a good budget and really sound. And we're not counting on getting any bond premiums for the 2022 bond. And I fully expect that if we get 0 bond premiums, then we're gonna be able to execute all of these projects. I feel that good about the estimates and the work that we've put into this project list. So honestly, I wouldn't even, it hadn't even occurred to me to count on bond premiums, and I wouldn't even know where to begin spending bond premiums if we're fortunate enough to get them.
I think there'd be a place to spend them.
You're probably right. I start to get scared about, that's a lot of extra money to be spending. So I don't know. Josh, have you heard from Mike what the bond market is like? I heard it's not favorable as far as premiums, but I don't know that.
Right. Tom, we haven't really gone into the premium discussion because we're focused on the 723 million program. And if you look at the risk where we have it's in our modernization bucket, which includes Beaverton High School and the rebuild of Raleigh Hills. And so the teams talked about what contingencies are in place for that. And there's a balance to the cost saving stick that you're looking at, because we're in a market conditions that we are now, we have to have some factor of contingency for materials and just other unknowns that we're looking at. So that's our biggest risk. So when we look at our deferred maintenance bucket at 120 million, those are projects that we are using the McKinstry data to help inform that and plan that piece of it. So we know we can be within budget. Our needs for deferred maintenance over the next 10 years is, including Seismic, is over 600 million. We're not going to solve that in this bond. We're going to have to continue to get the community support for more bonds in the future. So we know that there's that support that's going to continue on. And that's part of the, I think, education in our community that those needs will continue to grow, as well as Seismic, in order to meet the goals that we have by 2032. And so we really haven't gone into the premium discussion to answer your question. We know that there may be some opportunities there, but we're focused on the program as it is estimated now at that cap of 723, with contingencies built in. The large projects, we have a contingency in the program itself that's been budgeted as well.
Thanks, folks. Just a time check. We're within about the last 5 minutes, but we have a question from Sunita.
I'll make it quick. The question that Tom asked was asked in one of our advocacy meeting or bond education meeting, I can call it. And Josh actually covered that. That's what Carl answered it, that the contingency portion of it will cover it. Like if there's an increase, it's supposed they are looking into it, that we won't need to go over that. And your question leads to my other question. Is there any place where we can see a chart or something? What are the list of projects we had? What was the cost that was projected and what we actually spent, so that we can see overages or shortages? Because I see that there are projects being added. So maybe my understanding is that we did a good job. And if it went from 600 to 800, it was because of the premium, which we didn't even expect. Am I correct in my understanding for 2014 bond?
Yeah, you are correct. I mean, Tom is correct too. I mean, there are projects that went over budget, and those are shown in the bond financial report. But I mean,
Okay.
At the bottom line, yeah, all projects were completed within the approved budget plus extra projects.
Okay, all righty. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita. Just wanted to turn back to the committee. Prashant, Renu, anybody else have any other comments or questions? All right. Well, I just wanted to say, on behalf of the BAC, thank you all for taking the time to help meet with us and to showcase some of the work that's already underway to kind of get queued up for the next go round of things, but also to close out, our current bond cycle with a strong performance and, some solid planning fundamentals that, you've really honed as a district over this past, 8+ years to really help us to, really set the stage solidly for the future. So just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing to present all of this to us, the good work that you're doing every day, and just taking the time to share that with us as well. So much appreciated. And if there aren't any further questions, I think we can go ahead and adjourn, and we'll meet again back here on June 1st.
We actually had one more topic.
We have one more topic.
Oh my goodness.
Speaking of bonds.
Great presentation.
I did the pitch and the wrap, so go ahead and talk us about money. I forgot. Apologies.
You got 3 minutes, Josh.
I've got 6 slides, but I think I can summarize quickly what the updates are for student investment account and then the ESSER. And background situation for the student investment account, the SIA, you see the bullets up on the screen. The district received funding through the state to really support students in the classroom. So supporting mental health, supporting behavior, increased instruction time. That's where that funding came from or was directed for the SIA. The good news is for us as a district is that we've got about $4 million that can be allocated toward facility improvements. One of the uses of the SIA was towards facility improvements addressing student health and safety needs. And so that's an improved use for it. So as you see on the screen, second bullet, we have to spend $3.5 million of the student investment account by September 30th of this year, and then an additional $450K by September 30th of 23. The reason why there's a time crunch here for the $3.5 million is because the focus was in the classroom, and we were looking at hiring positions, and we didn't get all those positions filled. So we're able to take the funds and now apply it to facility improvements. So which is bringing us to where we're at with the SIA funds. So the third and fourth bullet talk about what we had briefed you, the BAC, in terms of using program reserve. We looked at security projects that ranked very high in priority because of safety and security for our students and our staff. And the projects that we looked at that we're going to talk about here specifically, classroom walls, security fencing, and security cameras. Those projects were not included in the original 2014 bond, and that planned. Through conversations with the committee, with the BAC, we were able to get those approved and using program reserve. However, now we have an opportunity to use student investment account funds. And so our path here, our way forward is that, by having to spend the $3.5 million by the end of September of this year, we don't really have a whole lot of time to put something together, new projects, new design, but we still want to continue with our classroom walls phase 2. We have essentially 3 phases in that classroom walls. Schools are identified up there, which schools are captured in phase 2, so Monica, Errol Hassel, Greenway. And then we also have a security fencing project that we're doing this summer as well at Beaver Acres, Montclair, and Terra Linda. And then also our security camera project, not planned in this current bond, but we were able to take program reserve funding, get cameras essentially in all our schools, high school, and elementary and middle. So the classroom walls phase 2 and the security fencing projects are currently programmed by, or they're planned to be funded by the program reserve. We're going to switch that over to the SIA because of the additional funds that are available. So we have at the bottom bullet, we've got 3 projects that we're planning to fund with these funds. Phase 2, I talked about those schools at $904,000. Security fencing, we have 1 group of projects that I talked about at $216K. Security cameras, we're looking at that work of $2.4 million of the 3.2 to be able to fund with SIA, which is a good news story. So that's the student investment account piece of it. With ESSER, which I have briefed the BAC, Brad, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I just wanted to be, mindful of time, and I didn't do my part to keep things on tap. So I was thinking, perhaps we could spend a few minutes at the next session talking through this to actually give us the time to go through, or was there a specific piece that we needed to get some feedback from the BAC for?
I was looking for endorsement on some of the projects here, and I'll get to it pretty quickly.
Okay.
So with the ESSER funds, I briefed the BAC before about ESSER. What I wanted to bring you an update on is that we had additional funds of ESSER come our way. We had originally budgeted 2.3 million approximately for using ESSER money to help pay for HVAC projects. And then in February of this year, we got an additional 7 million. And again, like this SIA situation, we're able to apply these funds to projects that were going to be funded by the bond. And so I have already briefed the school board on this plan. And what I'm showing you here, and really for your attention, would be the items in the blue font. We're taking bond funded projects at these schools. You see down at the bottom, McKinley, Kinnaman, Errol Hassel, ISB, and we're going to apply now ESSER money to pay for these projects. And these projects specifically were coming out of the district-wide facility repairs, the BCA as we call it. And again, now they're going to be funded by the funded by that project in the bond. They're going to be funded by ESSER. And in year 2, it's a 3-year program for ESSER money because the money expires in 2024. In year 2, we've got work at the schools there in blue, El Monica, Greenway, Nancy Rouse, and Stoller, where we're updating controls and we're modernizing them. And we're going to pay that with ESSER. So in summary, here's a summary slide, get to it very quickly. We're getting 3.95 million, again, approximately 4 million to return to the bond program reserve. Because of the SIA funding, we've got about 4 million, a little above 4 million that'll go back to the district-wide facility repairs bucket within the current bond because of ESSER funding. We'd like to move forward with using the additional savings that we get for the program reserve to more security projects. So there's a phase 3, and the schools are identified up there, and provide more cameras to our schools. We did an initial budget and installation of cameras at our schools at all the levels based on the budget that we had, but now we can increase that. We have an opportunity because we have funding that's being covered by the SIA. That's the endorsement that I'm looking for from the BAC, or those projects that are up there. These projects, classroom walls, security cameras, were in our top 5 that we briefed you back in January of 2020. For us, it's a continuation of that of those projects. The district-wide facility repair project, something that we got to work on, and we can brief the BAC in the future about that. Where do those funds go to? And we have plans for that. We have ideas, but we don't have to discuss that here at this time. And that is my last slide, Brad.
Thanks, Josh, and apologies to everybody for my mistake with not actually, managing the time. So that is on me. But with the time that's right here, I feel like we might be a little short on time for discussion. So I know that we're seeking an endorsement on this, but I'm going to look to the committee that's here right now. Are you comfortable discussing this now, or would you like to have a future conversation about this?
This is David. I'm willing to stay on to get this, to get Josh what he needs.
Thanks, David. Just looking to the rest of the committee as well.
I'm fine.
Thanks, Dick.
I
Sure.
actually do have another commitment at 8 o'clock that I need to get to. However, Josh, please confirm that everything that you're proposing with this summary is on the list of projects that we talked about back in January of 2020. I vaguely remember the column for like $100 million to be expending, and we discussed the various categories and then the project under each category. So to me, this is consistent with the conversation from a few years ago, and your recommendation to the committee is that this work is still needed. And quite frankly, we're fortunate to have the additional resources to be able to perform more work than we otherwise would have been able to. So I'm personally comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Josh, just to clarify on Cheryl's point, was it consistent with that same list that was previously presented?
It was, the project titles were, it's consistent. The estimates that we had at the time were based on the available budget that we were looking at. However, we've got more scope that we've added. So it's just, you know, the opportunity to be able to increase the amount of work that we have, that we had talked about.
So Josh, I want to clarify what you're asking us to support this recommendation that would go to the school board?
That's correct. It would, what we would do, Dick, after your, you know, we get a BAC endorsement, which would be important, we'd go to the school board and present it as a new project for them, understanding where the funds are coming from, SIA, ESSER, and then they would see the contract in a consent agenda and approve that as well. So it gives them some of that background of how we got the funding, how did we get additional program reserve, the reasons for that, which the board's been briefed about. The ESSER piece, the SIA is something that we just received from the business office as an opportunity to leverage those funds.
None of these are new. As far as my feelings on it, they're, as Josh said, and Cheryl, you reiterated, these are things we've talked about. Those of us that have been on the committee for all these years, these are all items that we've gone over before. There's a new source of funding. I personally don't need any more discussion or explanation. The funds are there. It would certainly be something that I would endorse doing as we sit here now.
Thank you, Tom. And just what I've heard also is that this is consistent with the guiding principles that we had for the kind of the usage of program reserves also. So nothing stands out to me from my perspective, but I look to the committee too for Renu and Prashant also, and Dick.
I think this is part of something that we've discussed before, especially I remember the security cameras. So I have no objection. I, though, just had a thought, it's sort of tangential. So from the security perspective, I'm wondering if making buildings badge access only would be a better, more cost effective than security cameras. I mean, it's just a thought. It has nothing to do with this, but I mean, it's in the same ballpark. So I just thought I would raise that.
Yeah, good point. So we did do that as a part of the 2014 bond. That was one of the first security upgrades project, was the perimeter hardening. So buildings are badge access.
I have a quick question. The last bullet points, that TBD, is the intention to actually put some estimation towards that?
Absolutely, Prashant. Absolutely. And really, it would take some of the proposed projects in the 2022 bond and deferred maintenance and move them earlier, because now we have the funding from ESSER to be able to now apply it to new projects.
Got it. Understood. But is that how it's going to be presented to the school board as in TBD, or will there be some?
No. They'll see it more in consent, but as a line item in the current program, in our current bond program, it's only district-wide facility repair, which we had a presentation. We talked about how the current estimate or the current budget is at 120 million approximately. Now we would add it. It would be plussed up by the additional 4 million.
Additional. Okay, understood. All right. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
I have another, I guess, clarification point. If I understand this right, what is happening is you've got additional funding from, or more funding than you expected from SIA and ESSER. And you want to use that funding to cover some projects that we'd already identified to be in the program reserve. And so that frees up or adds money to the program reserve. And these were the additional projects that you want to do with that money.
with the program reserve specifically. That's correct.
It sounds a little bit like a shell game, but I've dealt with different colors of money in government so long.
It's an opportunity. We didn't plan on SIA and ESSER money coming into our district, at the time, of course, planning the 2014 bond, but it's a great opportunity. It's a great problem to have. And I think, just carrying on with the project selection for what we will use the additional program reserve for is in alignment, like Brad pointed out, with the guiding principles that we talked about for program reserve projects.
Yeah, you're right, Dick. I mean, the distinction is the time limits on the money. So the SIA and ESSER monies have to be spent by a certain time period. And that's why we're proposing it this way.
Okay, well, I support it.
Thanks, folks. And the only person we hadn't heard from was Tom Quillen. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, no issue. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. Well, that being the case, I would say that, we've had the discussion and that it would carry for an endorsement on continuation of those using, or not continuation, the allowance of using those funds to support the SIA and ESSER funds in accordance with, the guiding principles that we had before. And I would just ask, with the district-wide facility repair, it looks like we'll have that as a topic for the next time to kind of talk about where what'll kind of fill the gap on the backside of that.
Absolutely. That was just why we didn't want to place that here for conversation, because we'll put that plan together and brief the committee.
Appreciate that. And I know we're running really late, but Shelley had another item here really quickly for the BAC, and just wanted to make sure that she had a time to get that to us before we head out. So Shelley, all to you.
All right, I'm going to take 60 seconds to update you on the education part of the 2020 proposed bond. I just wanted to let you know what we've been working on, and by your next meeting, it will be too late to tell you that. So we have created and printed several thousand flyers that were distributed throughout our elementary schools last week. They went home with everyone. They are very similar to some of the bond posters and website information that I've shown you before. Last week, we had 11 events. We had a bond Q&A in English, one in Spanish. We had 7 tours at all of the new schools from the 2014 bond, where we invited the community in to see what modern learning spaces look like. We also offered tours at Beaverton High School and Raleigh Hills, where our big rebuilds are. We've completed about 85-ish community meetings. That includes neighborhood groups, PTOs, and the like. We're also doing the Beaverton Farmers Market, did it last weekend, and we'll do the next 2 weeks, where we spend the whole day there talking to folks about the bond. I personally think I talked to about 100 people on Saturday, so that was productive. And then tomorrow, I'll be presenting at the Beaverton Voters Forum down at the Research Center, giving a presentation there to folks who've gathered to learn more. It's not advocacy, it's only education, but that will be a good venue for us to further educate the community. So those are some of the efforts that we've been working on in the next couple of weeks. Always open to ideas. We're only have a few more days left here as far as the countdown to election day. So if anything's top of mind, you can either tell me now or shoot me an email. So that might have been a minute 15, sorry.
Shelley, quick question, based on all of these meetings and stuff, what's your sense of the mood of the voters right now with regards to this bond?
It depends on what group I'm talking to, Dick. So the farmers market crowd, I came away from that feeling very positive. But I also am in charge of monitoring, the bond questions that we get in from the website and all our social media accounts. And, there's definitely folks who are dissenting, is that the right word? Who are not favoring the bond. There is a somewhat loose organization called pausethebond.com. They're related to a group called Save Oregon Schools. it's difficult to know how many people we're really talking about there. You know, sometimes your loudest voices are actually few in number. And so it's a little hard for us to judge. But is there, you know, semi-organized opposition? Yes. So I'm optimistic that it's going to pass. Is it going to be a wide margin? I would say no.
I would add, Shelley, the PTO meetings that I have attended and I heard from others have been very positive, Dick. You know, they understand the need. They understand what we're trying to accomplish. And it's been, you know, just getting that support and hearing that has been great.
And I would say, like, you know, we sort of assume that we're going to have support from our parents and our PTO groups and people who see our schools in action. Our larger challenge is the 75% of the voters in Beaverton who don't have kids in our school. So we've really tried to do as much outreach as we possibly can, but no good idea will go unheard here. I'm always open to suggestion.
Are we getting any corporate support from some of the major companies, Nike, Intel?
Yes, if Becky Timchuk were here to tell you, she is the chair of the actual campaign that the school board is putting on, and she's gotten quite a few corporate donors who have signed on and put their support behind it. And I think a couple of them are also noted in the voters pamphlet that add their names on to endorsements.
Quick question, the folks who are opposed to the bond, do they have one sort of central point of objection, or is it sort of nebulous?
So if I'm being really honest with you about the group, and I'm very familiar with this particular group of community members and parents, their opposition is to the school district in general right now. They're folks who they're not happy about curriculum as it relates to CRT. They're not happy about how the school district handled the pandemic. They have a lot sort of tied up in their emotion around the bond. But on paper, they will say that it's not the time, and that they sort of really dig into our ESSER funds, and they don't quite understand it, even though Josh has explained it to them, as have many on several different occasions. But they basically think that we did not use our federal ESSER funds to their maximum capacity, and that had we done that, we would have been asking for less bond money. Josh, am I characterizing that?
You are. I think the important point for the group and for Reno is that we didn't just, the presentation I just showed you about ESSER, the district didn't use just that money for HVAC projects. There were other things that were done in the classroom that ESSER was used for. And so that's really that kind of their point of contention. Like, you could have taken more of those funds and put it into facility improvements, but we had need on the teaching and learning side and across the district in other areas other than the things that I'm, focused on, which were ventilation and HVAC.
And to be honest, if they didn't complain about that, they'd find something else. Because again, the dissatisfaction, in my opinion, is not so much with the bond as it is just the district in general.
Great. Thank you, folks. I see that we've got a hand up from Sunita. Sunita, do you have something to share?
Yeah, I'll quickly add. I know everybody wants to go home. So I presented or advocated in 2 senior groups. And one of the things that people had, they said was that they were in fixed income and they were done with, paying for more and more property taxes. So that was one of the things. And we had to kind of convince them, the inflation is there for, and Measure 5, you can talk about Measure 5, like how it has impacted the school district. About the other group that Shelley was talking about, there were some of them, in our board meetings, and I agree with her in the sense that if it is not this, then it would be something else. And the understanding about the ESSER fund, how it should be used, is not really, they said that you only hired 20 teachers, but we didn't need to hire more teachers because the school admission rate went down. We lost like 32,000 students, but we still maintained the teachers, and we were trying to make that point to them. But I think if it's not this, it would be something else. But for seniors, it is because they are in fixed income and they are hurting. So that's one thing that I heard.
And inflation is a legitimate argument. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all know that.
Yeah.
So if the bond were to fail, I think it's the economic climate that we're in.
Yeah.
Folks, thanks very much. And if we have any other things to pass on, feel free to reach out to me and I can forward those on to Shelley. So you can follow up with me afterwards. But thanks. We already did the wrap. Appreciate everybody taking the extra time. I know we're quite a bit late, but appreciate the attention. So thank you very much, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
I know.
Right.